Hello everybody, I hope everybody is well. So before we start, let me talk a bit about myself and talk about geography in general. So you can see here, let's talk about my parents. So the family of my dad was from Malta, whereas my mom is from Avignon, which is in the southeast of France. And then I'm born in a city called Tours, where I've been raised until I was like 18. Then I moved to Nantes, where I studied. And then later on, I moved to Paris, where I started to work until 2011, before I migrated to Australia. So why do I tell you this story? And maybe you have noticed that some of the dots are orange and some are blue. So essentially, this is to highlight that even though my parents are from South Europe and sunny places, I've been living in very gloomy places in the north part of France. And maybe because of that that situation, I've been struggling a bit with the lack of sun, and I was feeling a bit depressed. And so at some point, I bought some glasses that was putting a bit of light into my brain. So the second way I was trying to cope with that lack of light is that I was spending a lot of time to travel overseas. And, in France, we've got tons of holidays, I think something like 8 weeks. And believe it or not, but I was spending every single day of these 8 weeks to travel overseas. And so at that time, I bought a book that was giving a lot of information about weather. So there was like 2 pages for each country. And then for each country, there was a list of cities, main cities. And then you've got statistics on how sunny it is, how rainy it is, what's the temperature like, etc. And I was using this book a lot to determine where I should go at each point of the year, and which was good condition to go in a given place. And I spent hours and hours on that book, and I always dreamed of having something in an electronic format. So guess what? What we'll be doing during the next few minutes, I will actually build this electronic version of that book using the power of Tableau. So I am Mark Saila, I'm working for Tableau here in Sydney, and we'll be spending the few next minutes a bit in Tableau prep, and then we'll talk about how we use Tableau desktop to build this nice application. So first of all, so what I'm gonna use for my sources? Essentially, I've been lucky, and you know that now I've got Wikipedia where you've got tons of information, and there is one page that gives information about sunshine. So you see that there's cities across the world organized by continents, and for each of the cities you see the number of hours of sun per month. So you've got Africa, Asia, Europe, and so on. And you've got something similar for the temperature. So the same kind of things. I've got a table for each continent, and then the difference here will be that you actually have 2 lines for each city. One is containing the temperature in Celsius, the other one would be in Fahrenheit. So what I did, I will save that part, but essentially I did copy and paste from that page here into Excel, and I got something like that. So you can see I haven't changed much formatting. It's pretty much like the page that it is. If you have a look at the same one for temperature, same kind of concept. I just had to tweak it a bit. So I did 2 transformations. First one was to add a column to tell the continent. And the other transformation I did was to add the last column to be able to tell the unit. So my goal here is to be able to differentiate in between Celsius and Fahrenheit. So let's have a look how you will use these files into Tableau Prep. So I'm in Tableau Prep now. I'm going to connect to a first file that contains the hour of sun. So when you open your file, Stem show you like an overview of what is in that file. And you can see that at this point of time, it's not very clear, it's not very clean. There's a lot of headers which do not have any names. The reason is because my file is not super clean, right? But there is a magic button. I highly advise you to use it, which is this thing called Use Data Interpreter. So the minute you click it, Basically, it will be able to have a look at the data, the shape of the data, and then we present something which is much more understandable. So actually, if I'm going here and say now I want to add a step, a clean step, here you can have an idea of your profile of your data. You can see that the first few columns are like do not contain any useful information, but then the rest is kind of clean. So what I'm gonna do here, I will remove all these useless columns like that. I don't necessarily need to have the yearly amounts as well as a reference. Same thing, I remove them. And now let's have a look at the other data here. So I've got country and city, and I don't know if you see that, but you've got this kind of a bulb thing, which is called recommendation. So it's something pretty new to Tableau Prep. I will click on that, and basically the system says maybe it looks like this column is supposed to select contain country. So do you want to mark and say that data role of this column to be country? I will say yes in that situation. Okay. So just for information here, this concept of data roles, you can also use it for other stuff. So what you can do here, you can actually go in and say, okay, my data role here will be an email address or URL. And this will be very helpful to be able to identify the rows that do not contain a proper email address or URL. So you see this is possible using some expressions, using some calculation, but it's much easier to use this kind of mechanism of data role. It's much easier. You have insert straight away. So here I say that I want to have countries and region, or these rows are supposed to contain country and region. And you see that I've got like exclamation mark, so which highlight the one which are not correct. So if I want to just see those ones, I can go back in here and I can say I just want to show the not valid values. And what I can see here is that most of them would be like header that was in my Excel file, like Asia edit or Europe edit. So the different continents, and then headers like sunshine hours for selected things. So obviously these do not contain any valid data. So I can remove all of that. And you can see that the only one, the only exception is Congo here. Probably it's not the proper name, but that's okay. I will just keep Congo as it is, and I will remove all the rest. So go like this, and I go back to Congo, and I want to highlight here, and then I go exclude. So basically I've excluded everything but Congo here. So the same kind of concept is for cities. I can go here, say that this is actually a city, and then system will highlight the one which are not like valid cities. So let's have a look here. So there's a bunch of them. So it doesn't mean that these are not proper cities. It only means that Tableau is not able to recognize them because maybe they are too small. You know, Tableau does not contain every single city in the world. So I could look and dig, etc. But yeah, for the sake of time, I will not do that for now. Okay, so last thing I will do with that file here, it will be about pivoting. So, you know, in Tableau, generally, when you deal with numbers, it's much better to have one column that will contain the metric and then a row for each number. So basically what I want to do here, I want to replace my month name, which are currently columns, and I want these to be rows. So how to do that's pretty straightforward. Going here, and I say I want to create a pivot here. Then the only thing I need to do is to drag the columns I want to pivot. So essentially I want to do everything but city and country. Do like that, just drag it. And now the only thing I need to do, I need to rename a column. So this column will be the month. And this one will be the number of hours of sun. So now I've got something pretty simple to use, just like 4 columns, number of hours, which is my metric, the month, the country, and the city. So now let's deal with the second file that contains data about temperature. So same principle, I will add new connection, I connect to my file. You can see same thing than before. System is not really able to recognize what they are, but the minute I click on use that data interpreter, now I've got something I'm able to use. So let's have a look at this into more details. Yeah, it's pretty cool. So actually what I will do before doing that cleaning step, at some point I will need to pivot, so obviously I can do the same thing, but what is cool is that I can also copy and paste my steps. So I can go here and I say I want to copy that pivot step here, I want to paste it here, and then I just need to link this and this. So basically I will drag my sheet onto this and I will just say add. So now I got this, and then I got pivot operation here, which works. So the only thing I need to tweak here is that obviously the measure is not the number of hours of sun, but that would be the temperature. Let's have a look at the other transformation I'll be doing here. So I'll be adding my add step. Okay, so what do we have here? So first of all, remember we've got the units with Celsius and Fahrenheit. So here in this part of the word, we are only dealing with Celsius. So what I'll be doing, I will go on the C thing, and I will just say keep only. I will exclude the rest. Now I don't really need this column, and I actually don't need the year, ref, and units. So I can get rid of all of that. And similarly to before, I can have a look here and say I want to recognize the country which are not correct. So I can say that this thing has to have a country region as a data raw. Now if I'm going to see the not valid one, the only one which has not been recognized is Solomon Island, which is fine enough. Probably it does exist, but the system was not able to recognize them. Let's check with the cities, same kind of principle. This is a city column. And I just want to see the non-valid one. This seems to be like correct cities. Maybe like things like Washington, D.C. It's not able to recognize maybe because of the comma. So potentially I can go back in and remove the comma. But yeah, now, yeah, it's still wrong. So I'm not sure what's wrong with that one, but that's fine for now. Okay, so now I want basically to merge these two information. So I will create what we call a join. So I go back in here and say I want to join, and I want to join this one with this one. So I go here and say add. Boom. Join is here. So now I need to tell the system on which column I want to make the join. So here I want to say, okay, I want to join cities as well as country, as well as month. Okay, so what do we see here? What is cool about that system is that straight away you are able to identify the rows that do not match. So here in that scenario, I use an inner join. So basically the rows needs to be on both sets. And then I will be able to know how many have been excluded. So see, out of, I don't know, maybe 380 rows coming from the first file that was containing number of hours of sun, 624 rows have been excluded. And coming from the second one, you've got like a fairly more rows that has been excluded, like 1600 lines. So because why is that? It's probably because my second file with temperatures contain many more cities than my file with sun, which is kind of okay. But now if I want just to see which one has been excluded, I've got this magical button here called show only mismatch values. And what you can see here, you can see that on my left hand side, for instance, I do have Addis Ababa, and on the right hand side I've got Addis Ababa. And I know that both cities are actually in Ethiopia and actually the same city. So believe it or not, there are two different spellings for the same capital of Ethiopia. So what I can do to make the join working, I can rename one of those. So for instance, I can go back to this one here, and now I go here and say I don't want to use Addis Ababa, I want to use Addis Ababa, like that. Now if I'm going back onto my join, you will see that now if I go to show only mismatch value, the Addis Ababa thing is gone. So now I've got actually less line that has been excluded because now Addis Ababa has been able to join. So that's kind of it. Maybe one very last thing is that I can get rid of, when you create a join, it does kind of duplicate the columns. I mean, it doesn't get rid of the columns. So here we've got cities and country and month. which will be in both, be 2 times essentially. So I don't need to add that. I will get rid of the duplicate. So I get rid of the month one, as well as country one, as well as city. All good. So the next thing I will be doing here, now I want to walk into desktop. So what I can do very easily, I can actually go back here and say I want to preview my results into Tableau desktop. So by doing that, it will running the flow. And now I will have my data into desktop. It should take a second or two. Yeah, it's coming now. Okay, cool. So I've got my data set here. So I will create something very basic. So remember what was the goal here is to know where I should, where I should go if I want to have sun and good temperature. So these are my two measures. What is the best will be to create a scatter plot. So I will click on temperature, click on number of hours of sun, and let's say I want to have one dot by city. I will put city on detail. And now maybe I want to highlight or make different color by continent. Drag continent on color. If I want to compare my dots with the average, I can always go back here and I can drag my average like that. Okay, so now what I've got, and we just go back to temperature maybe and replace by a sum, an average, sorry. So if I'm going here, basically the city which are on that top right corner will be city which are good for me because they are very sunny and kind of hot. On the other hand, city which are down here, they are very bad because they are very cold and gloomy, not so much sun. So for instance, if you don't want to see any sun and if you don't want to go outside because it's super cold, I recommend you to go to Dixon in Asia. I can actually put the country in if I want just to have bit more information about that. So it's actually in Russia. On the other hand, if I want to have a lot of sun and very hot temperature, I could go to Khartoum in Sudan, or I can go to Phoenix in Arizona. And obviously, right now I've got one dot by city, but if I want to be more specific, if I want to have one dot by city and by month, I can add the month to a detail, and now I will have many more dots. And if I want to know overall that what's the city in the world that is the most sunny for one given month, however, that would be Sacramento in the US, which is super sunny, like 440 hours of sun in July. That's the best time. So actually, using this kind of mechanism, you can go here and say, okay, let's say I want to go in Sacramento. You can go here, and then you will have a look at what Sacramento numbers look like. It's kind of cool, is it? So I can always go back and remove that, and I can actually use the month as a filter. So this will give me the option to say, okay, I want to go somewhere at 1 month, and then I will have my number coming in. So it's kind of nice, but here I'm missing a bit of context. So because I can see information here, but maybe I have no clue what it's on in IRA or maybe in Sacramento. It's a good place to go there. So it would be good to have an idea what kind of landscape I have to expect there, and maybe what kind of things I can see there. So what I will be doing, I will first create a map. So I just go here and I say I want to have my country as well as my cities. And this will be useful to be able to identify what kind of landscape it is. So by default, I got the Tableau map, but doesn't provide much information. But what I can do, I can go back in here and I can change what kind of map I want to use. So I'm going to my map thing and going to background maps, and then got map services. And basically what I'll be doing here, I'll be using the functionality of Mapbox Maps, which is something cool because you don't have to pay anything, just can create like an account, and then you'll be able to customize maps very easily. So it's what I did here. So I'm going to maps, and then what you need to do, you just need to have a token coming from the application, which I already done there. So I can go my thing here, and then I can copy it to this, and this I can call it like satellite view or whatever. And then you can see that you got a bunch of options here. I will select my satellite here. And now, guess what? I've got satellite view of the world. So now if I'm linking both things together within one dashboard, I can put my scatter plot first, and then I can put my thing here. Now if I'm clicking on one particular city, let's say Phoenix, not yet. I need to link both things, so I say that I want to use this one as a filter. So if I'm clicking on Phoenix, so it doesn't work because probably Phoenix is not recognized, but if I'm clicking on, let's say, Sao Paulo, now it's going on Sao Paulo, and I can see that it's not so far away from the sea, for instance, right? So it's kind of cool. Let's say now I want to put more information, so I want to have like to know what kind of things I should expect to see there. So what would be useful is to get information from Wikipedia. So I will be staying on my dashboard. I will change a bit the size to have more space. And I will add two web pages. One here, which I will call it, I'll give a name. And then another one here. And I will show you now something which is relatively new, which is new to 2019.2. So I will go to my dashboard actions. And now what I'll be doing, I will be creating a go-to URL. So up to now, everything was possible before. Okay, so I will say that whenever I click something to my sheet 1 or sheet 2, let's say sheet 1, when I select something, I want Wikipedia page to be displayed. And the way it works is that basically it's just like en.wikipedia.org/wiki, and then I will pass through the city name. Right? And then so this part is new. Now I can tell which web page I want to target, because in that scenario I do have two web pages. So now I want to say, okay, I want to select the first one here. Well, above the same name, but you will see that next time it will be different. Right. So I'm going here. And now I'll do the same thing, but now what I want to do, I want to display whatever information from Wikipedia about the selected city. So I'm going back here, and I will do the same thing. And I will say on select, and now you see the list. Actually, I'll still name the same, but actually, I will select the second one. And now if I'm selecting one dot, let's say this guy here, Baghdad. Let's wait for a second. Hey, voila. So we can see that Baghdad is in the middle of a desert. That's why it's so sunny and so hot. I can have a background information about Baghdad, and then I can actually go directly to the section that deals with climate. Maybe just because it's recording, I can do one little last thing, which is kind of nice. Let's say I want to give more information about the temperature and number of hours of sun, maybe to have it by month. I can create the viz in tooltip. So first I will create my viz. It's pretty straightforward. I want to display my temperature by month. I will do an average here. And I want to do the same thing, but this time for number of hours of sun. And maybe just for argument's sake, I will change that one to be a curve. Okay, so I will be having one thing, temperature, as well as number of hours of sun. And I want to use this as a tooltip, so I'm going back to my sheet 1, going back here. Now I will say I want to insert my sheet 3. And maybe because it's a bit, I will change the size, so I'll put something like 600. So I check it's working, going here. Okay, so it's kind of okay. So now I can see on the same sheet, actually not okay because it stopped in September. So let me shrink that a bit. Now I'm going to December. So if I'm now going back to my dashboard, I can have this kind of information. I can select any month I want. Then if I'm clicking on one of those, I can have an idea of the curve. So if I'm going to Sydney, for instance, which I can actually go here and create a highlighter. So if I'm going to Sydney, so you can see that Sydney is pretty much in the middle, so it's not super sunny, especially in June. So actually, should create maybe all. So Sydney is more a bit upper now, and you can see that the temperature obviously are colder in winter, but you can see that in terms of number of hours of sun, you can see that winter is not that bad. Actually, it's pretty sunny in Sydney even in winter. So that's about it. So hopefully this was helpful. To understand that in a few minutes, I was able to build like something pretty complex, right, with a lot of interactivity and yeah, I've been really able to leverage what was in Wikipedia to be able to create like a nice data set. So thanks for your listening.